Strong looks different for each of us, and it's time to put focus on our unique journeys that get us there. This space, created weekly, is for athletes to improve their mindset in order to better navigate challenges that come up in sport and in different seasons of life. On this show, we ask the questions that lead to better answers and have the conversations that truly matter. This is the Becoming Your Strong podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast, and surprise, I have another guest for you this week. This was totally not planned, and I was so excited to get back and just talk about the weekend at Underdog Fitness. And I was like, you know what? This is dumb to talk about it alone. I should talk about it with my partner in crime, hence why AJ Golik is here, and I'm so excited. Welcome to the podcast, friend.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, big fan of you, big fan of the pod. So super excited to finally join the show.
I know. Me too. This is a long time coming. Well, I obviously know all the things about you. Listeners, you probably have at least seen AJ once or twice at a bare minimum on my stories, just in my feed, on Instagram, all the things. AJ is one of the coaches with me. We also are teammates together on the Underdog Fitness Podium Chasers team. We're two of the elite dogs. We've raced together in several capacities. And so I'm going to give you the floor, AJ, just to tell people a little bit more about yourself, like how you got into hybrid racing, how you found Underdog Fitness. Just let people know who you are.
Yeah. So my hybrid fitness journey started in June of 2022. I was training CrossFit, like full blown CrossFit, following CrossFit programming, the whole nine. That was kind of the route I chose after finishing up college and college athletics, and wanted to do something fitnessy, I guess. So was training fully CrossFit. A DEKA Strong road show popped up on Long Island, which is rare because still to this day, in the wonderful year of 2025, there are no DEKA affiliates on Long Island. So the road show popped up and it hit me on like Instagram, like a targeted ad kind of deal, because it was only 40 minutes from my house. So I sent it to my buddy Sam, who I was training CrossFit with, and was like, hey, this kind of just looks like a short Metcon, like, want to go do this thing? So we drove out there, we did it. It went as good as it could have gone for not knowing anything about DEKA and just kind of jumping into the fire. Thankfully, like, I had a decent fitness base built, so I wasn't entirely destroyed, but it wasn't great. Which then led me to Underdog. I stumbled upon Underdog randomly. So like many people who do their first anything race, DEKA, Spartan, High Rocks, road race, you kind of just get that itch where after you finish it, you're like, that was actually kind of fun. Like, let's do another one. So I went on the DEKA Fit website and I searched for a race near me. Like I mentioned, there are no DEKA affiliates on Long Island. So the closest one was Wallingford, Connecticut. So signed up. That was the DEKA Mile. That was the following month. So now we're in July of 2022. I get in the car with my mom. Quick side note, my mom goes everywhere with me. So if I'm at a race, 9 times out of 10, she's there and she's screaming. So you'd also be able to pick her out of the crowd. So we drive up to Underdog, complete stranger. I just pop in there to do my DEKA Mile. I finish up my DEKA Mile, and that kind of just opened all of the doors. I started talking to some of the Underdog athletes up there, met Kevin and Jess, started just kind of having conversations that were leading more towards pursuing this a little bit more. I mean, of course, at first it wasn't anything that I was diving fully into, but a few of the athletes up there mentioned like that I could be at least decent at this, including Kevin. And I remember having like a really long conversation with Jill Ford, and the consensus was kind of like, you're pretty fit, you have a decent base. If you pursue this, you could probably be relatively good. So that was kind of my, like, I guess, Underdog initiation. And thankfully, obviously, Kayla knows too. And like she's spoken about on the pod and on socials, like the Underdog community is just like one ginormous, big, warm hug.
Yes.
So I felt super embraced by everybody. And not to go too deep into a tangent, but I was coming from a place of where I felt like I wasn't really in a community. I didn't really have a lot of people. I was kind of separating from like my college friends and felt like I was in kind of a void space where didn't feel super, I guess, loved or surrounded by like my people. So went up to Underdog, kind of started to find my people like by chance. And now here we are almost 3 years later, and I'm all in on the hybrid stuff. I'm coaching with Underdog Fitness. I would say, as integrated into the Underdog community as I possibly can be. And I could not have asked for a better like circumstance or a better outcome. So
Yeah.
just fate, timing, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe in, but something led me to Underdog, and now here we are, and like my life's done a 360 twice.
It's magical how that happens, huh? I felt the same way. I was talking to Kevin about that the other day, and I did a podcast about this recently where it's like, how in the world did I get here? And it's like, you just go knocking and you put it out to existence that like, hey, I'm open and I'm willing to receive what it is that you're willing to give to me, universe, or again, whatever you believe in. And within a matter of a year, everything has just turned around for the better. And that's kind of how you and I fell into each other's lap. Is I was like a lost puppy in the gym trying to figure out, like, I think it was like December, January. What was the date that you have on our first messages together?
January 4th of 2024. Um,
Okay. Crazy, freaking crazy.
yes.
But I had just joined Kevin like in programming in like late December. Like we just got back from Worlds. I was super motivated and he started programming these clean things that I had no idea what they were. And I was just trying to figure it out. And AJ goes on one of my stories and I don't know him fully yet. He reaches out to me and says, hey, I have the best intention in the world. You can take it or leave it, but I'm going to help you. And just gives me all of the advice. And for me, it was like, well, I could either take this as like, who are you, dude? Or I could take it as like, okay, this guy's like really cool and he's like seriously trying to help me from afar. Like, this is what this team is going to truly give me as a network and a solid community and friendship. And that's just kind of where it all like came together. Like, you and I started talking all the time. And then all of a sudden we were like, hey, I want to go fast. I'm coming out to Underdog in June or whenever it was. I want to race with you. Let's do it. And then we did a teams race. And from there it was like ride or die. Like, we're going to world championships together. We're going to figure this out. And we did it. We did all the things last year. So it's just been such a
Yes.
blessing.
Yeah. And I will preface with I am the last person that's going to be the form police. Like, unless you're my athlete or unless you're my friend, I'm not going to comment on anything. I'm not going to swipe up on your stories. I'm not going to comment on your posts. I'm not going to comment on your videos. To each their own, but not my own. But when it becomes my own, then I do reach out with, like Kayla said, like good intention. And I think that was like the first thing I said in the message. I was like, please don't shoot. I'm not trying to like pick on you. I'm not trying to be mean. Like, but because she also did say on her story, like, second time doing cleans or something, like she made it a point that she was very new to this. So I saw that as an opportunity to help.
Yeah.
Obviously, I heard of Kayla because now she was integrated into the Underdog Fitness Podium Chaser team, and now being slowly swallowed by the community. So I knew of Kayla. We followed each other on socials, but prior to that, like, no real interaction. But I saw her story and was kind of like, I know I can be of assistance without sounding like I'm being like, haha, your cleans suck.
Yeah.
So I tried my best to deliver like advice that I could, which led to a few more of those messages and like sending videos back and forth and like
Mhm.
helping kind of that progression. But then, like Kayla mentioned, just like leading into this blossoming friendship. And now here we are, and we raced at Worlds together. All we do is laugh. Like, we share a lot of the same like thoughts and hobbies and just things. Like, we're definitely two peas in a pod. So it's
Yeah.
awesome. Like you said before, like, how did we end up here? But here we are. So it's awesome.
Here we are. Yeah. And I think that's just a note for people listening. I think we're afraid, whether it's to take the leap or to have the conversation, to extend the olive branch. If you're always coming from a good place and a good intention, the right people will never see it as the wrong intention. And those are going to be the people that are going to be your ride or dies, your best friends, the people that you create a very good relationship with. And it just, again, it happened to be in the situation where you and I were in the right place with in who we are as human beings. And it worked. And it created, like you said, this beautiful blossoming friendship. But for people that are afraid to, again, to extend the olive branch, that know that they want to coach or create impact in other people's lives, if you're always doing it from the right spot, the wrong people, they might see it as wrong. And those aren't your people anyways. And that's fine, right? Like anytime you get that pushback, you just say, let it go, like bless and release. And those aren't my people. But the right people are going to see it as something absolutely magical. So it was just a blessing in disguise for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, 100% agree there. Like the worst case scenario, if you do reach out to somebody and either provide feedback or constructive criticism or ask questions, the worst possible scenario is that they don't answer. Or if they do answer and they give a little pushback, then you just move on with the rest of your day. It's not as deep or not as stressful as it may seem. And the worst case scenario is that you don't get like a positive response, but that doesn't need to be anything further than you read it and you do away with it. So
Absolutely. And that's what's led us here now, as we've had several of those moments of like when I was relearning how to run again, AJ was sending me videos of like, hey, try this, and that. Like it's always this constant thing. And so going into this year, we were talking about goals and what it is that we wanted to accomplish. And I made it pretty on the forefront of like, I have some sort of knack with this ruck situation. I don't know if that's just in the strong discipline within DEKA. I don't know if that's going to extend to all the other disciplines yet, but I know that there's something here. And I've made it pretty known to people that like, I want to go back to worlds. I want to defend a world championship title, like continue to set world records. I want to do some big things with this and I want to take people along on the ride with me. And AJ quite literally jumped on that boat with me and said, I just signed up for the event in February and you and I are going to race right next to each other and I'm going to pace you to the next world record. And I was like, who in the world has relationships like this? Like people that are willing. And you know what's funny, AJ, is like, I think a week or two prior to this conversation, you were like, I am never doing the strong ruck again. That was so painful. But then I told you what my goals were and you're like, I'm in, I'm coming, I'm in. What do I need to do? So I am just really appreciative of it. This weekend was everything and more. And I'm more excited to hear from your perspective of like what was going on in your brain and like how was the race for you?
yeah, I did the strong ruck in January. That was my first time. After I did the strong ruck, immediately I did say, I think I said it in the team group chat, that the strong ruck was worse than the fit ruck and the mile ruck, and that I would never do it again. Um, and then here we are a month later, and I definitely did it again. Um, yes, and with the intention to be kind of like a pacer and be a motivator and just be somebody to battle with. Kayla and I were talking about this right before the race, that it's much easier to either be hunting or be hunted and keep that fire and want to be able to push and really go for it, versus when you're going out by yourself and it's more of a time trial. Then it becomes a, do I push? Do I not push? You don't really know kind of your pacing. There's a little bit less of a fire underneath you versus when you're trying to hunt somebody down or when you're trying to run for your life. So jumping in and being like the pacer for the ruck was my a priority for the weekend, was just to give Kayla what she needed to succeed, which did lead to a very hefty 25-second PR in the strong ruck.
Sure did.
Um, but the weekend as a whole was awesome. I mean, being at Underdog and with the people is so filling, just physically, emotionally, mentally. It's definitely a very quick and easy way to just like revitalize yourself, in my opinion, and from my experience. So the
Mm-hmm.
weekend as a whole was awesome. I was celebrating my birthday, so it felt like there was no better way to celebrate my birthday than to go and be with all my friends and also do a ton of fitness. So, and eat ice cream, of course.
Of course.
But the weekend was really good. I think the High Rock Strong beat us up a little bit more than we would have wanted.
You sure did.
Um, but that event made me thankful for the running in High Rocks because of the row to farmers to lunge sequence, because that got really gross really quickly
Yes, it
and made
did.
the lunges very hard. So it made me thankful for the runs. It also kind of opened my eyes a little bit in terms of like your fitness will translate. So even if the style of race is a little bit different or the demand is a little bit different, like your base of fitness will help carry you through an event, through a race, through a workout session. Like you can rely on that, which is kind of just learning to trust the work that you put in and day out,
Hmm.
and leaning into that when it starts to get uncomfortable, that you know you have a strong foundation of fitness. And then we go into Sunday, which was the DEKA day. Um, in the beginning and middle portion of this, Joe and I went on a few runs.
A
Um,
lot of runs, a
we
lot
went
of
on a few
miles.
runs. So then we get to the DEKA day Sunday, and the first race that we were doing was the DEKA Strong Ruck. So I left Kayla alone because I know when you're trying to warm up and you're trying to get in the zone, like the last thing you want to do is have conversations with a bunch of people. And I found that to be something I try to avoid when I'm warming up for races too. It's like I just like to put my headphones in, go find my own space, go through my own flow and my routine. And then, like, when it's race time, then we'll go. So
Mhm.
I let her do her thing. She was warming up, she was getting into it. I think like once in passing, I was like, "How you feeling?" Um, to which the response was really
Terrible.
sore. Yeah, from the High Rock Strong. So after she finished warming up, I did touch base of like, okay, what would you like me to do for you in this situation? Like, do you want me to go out super fast where you are trying to hunt me down and like build a lead? Do you want me to kind of be more neck and neck with you and pushing you with the paces that you'd like to hold and be comfortable with? I also checked in to figure out when she wanted like time checks to see if pacing was working, if she needed to pick up the pace, if she needed to drop the hammer and really just go. So we ironed out some of those details and I got very clear instructions. So I knew what I had to do. So we did a nice little three-way battle with me, Kayla, and Joe. 3, 2, 1, go, we do our thing. Um, I give Kayla her the time check when we get to the tank. Um, we finish out. She almost catches me on the burpees. I get to the burpees with, I think, a 5 or 6 rep lead, and
Yep.
she only finished 2 reps behind me, so she was hunting. Um, and when we finished, our times were 14 flat and 14:06,
Yep.
so a little bit behind where the record was set, but for her it was a 25-second PR, and for me it was a 14-second PR, and we were running on less than ideal legs
Hmm.
and definitely a lot of carryover fatigue from Saturday, which was known and kind of self-inflicted. Like, we knew what we were signing up for, but with all things considered, I think that we both ran really, really well. Kayla, especially, like, bike tank burpees was insane. Like, because I think I got to the tank when Kayla was just getting on the bike, and she just closed that gap like crazy. So the back half of her race was nuts. Um, and I think that overall it went really well. After that, we both jumped into some teams because
That's
you're
what we do.
there, and yeah, you're there and there's people there and somebody wants to do teams. So you're like, okay. So I did teams with my friend Erin, and then I did teams with Jess. Um, and Kayla did teams with Morel. And then after that, I wound up hitting the road, but then I watched Kayla do DEKA Atlas on the live stream, and she absolutely annihilated the DEKA Atlas. Almost beat Kev, gave Kev a run for his money.
That was fun.
Um, So that was really fun to watch. So I just think the weekend as a whole was like just awesome. Like you really can't ask for too much more when you're in the same shared space with like-minded individuals and also people that you've built such good bonds with and such good friendships with. Like we were laughing more
Mhm.
than we were talking,
Oh my god.
which is just it's impossible to walk away from that weekend without like a stupidly big smile on your face and just thinking about like all the funny things and all the new memories and the one-liners and just funny things that go on. So overall, an incredible weekend at Underdog.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree. I think I went in obviously with the expectation of we've got some big goals to try and hit, and I've got everyone in my corner and behind me that are going to rally regardless of what happens. They're going to be proud. And it was an interesting mindset shift for me over the weekend, especially after getting done with the High Rock Strong. I knew immediately when I got done, the feeling in my legs and just how jolted I felt. I was like, oh, this is going to be really hard to come back from. And it's really easy to be like, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Like, I was only 17 seconds behind the record. Had I been totally fresh, there's a large likelihood I think AJ and I probably would have done the deed. But like,
100%.
I to me, that doesn't matter nearly as much because I got the race that I needed, not necessarily the race that I wanted. And I talk about that a lot on the podcast as I think, the universe is really good at giving you what you need, not necessarily what you always want. And what I needed in that moment was community. And the race experience that I got is I'll never forget it. I will cherish it forever. To have literally everyone in that room behind me cheering me on, like pushing me to the limits. Like again, it's not every day that you get to race with your best friends and they are just all with you every single step of the way. Like it's quite magical and quite special. So these race weekends, you go in with a goal, but just remember that like you're going to get everything that you need out of it, even though it's not the destination that you thought it might take you to. And you can't sit there and wonder what if. Like, again, I did that at World Championships. If I didn't do the elite mile, I probably could have made it really close to podium in the elite strong. Oh, well, I lived my life. And that to me is so much more important than any sort of outcome. And you even reached out to me after like saying, I feel a little bit of guilt that we didn't like do the deed. And I was like, no, like we got everything and more out of this weekend. And so just a good reminder mentally to think about those things.
Oh, absolutely. And funny enough, Joe and I actually were talking about that yesterday, because I listened to the pod episode with him and I texted him and I was like, "Oh, dude, I didn't know that that happened to you during Dallas for your first elite podium." And he was like, "Yeah, well, it's just not necessary information to broadcast. Like the outcome is the outcome." And that definitely resonated heavily with me because very commonly you see on social media people expressing those what ifs or the shoulda, coulda, wouldas or the if this, then this, or in if this would have happened, then I could have X, Y, and Z, which yes, it all could be a possibility, but at the end of the day, none of those conversations or questions change the outcome. So
Yep.
now, as you mentioned, was it the outcome you wanted? Maybe not necessarily. Was it the outcome that you earned? Absolutely. So now you can take that one of two ways. You can look at it from the perspective of an athlete and a competitor and see, okay, where do I need to improve? Where
Yep.
can I improve? And you can also look to see like what was super positive about it. What did I learn?
Yep.
What went right? What was successful? And then just knowing that you can use that for later on in any other race or even workout sessions that start to get tough. Like how much did you dig? Like how hard did you push? Like I mean, I watched you on the burpees and you gave it quite
Everything.
literally everything you had on the burpees. So that's a huge takeaway that you can get to the end of that race and even though you're running on fumes and you just sold out, you can still hammer the burpees if you have that desire. So there are always positive and negative takeaways from races and the more that you look at them through, I don't want to say rose-colored glasses because not like false optimism, but the more you look at the positive takeaways or the areas to improve and learning opportunities, the more positive you'll be in terms of then racing and competing again. So I think that even though the outcome was not fully what we wanted, there were still so many positives, mainly being a 25-second PR on waking up on Sunday feeling kind of like garbage, um, and still being able to put up a insanely strong time, like better than your time from Worlds. Like there are a lot of good takeaways that you can look at that race and be able to walk away like with your head high. And to your point, I did shoot Kayla a text and I did say that I felt a little bit guilty because I was thinking about the race, and I guess that guilt is definitely a strong word. I was feeling a little bit like I could have done more. Um, didn't necessarily know what that could have been, but I feel like I may have left a little bit on the table in terms of what my duties and what my responsibilities were. Um, I tried my very best to give encouragement throughout, stay on track, make sure I did try to build a little bit of a lead on her so that it kind of kept her mind firing of like, okay, got to start closing this gap, got to close this gap. Um, and then, I mean, once we get to the burpees, then it's just like whoever can dig a little bit deeper. So if she would have passed me on the burpees, I would have been like, hats off to you because I'm not very good at ruck ram burpees. And you can see it just watching me. I look horrible. But I just felt like I could have given a little bit more, which to then Kayla mentioned that just based on how she was feeling, even if I would have pushed a little bit harder and tried to pull her with me or gave her more cheers and more encouragement, it wouldn't have necessarily moved her legs any faster,
Nope.
which was a huge eye opener because obviously I have no idea how Kayla's feeling, especially in the middle of a race. Like you can see, like some people make pain faces, some people have like agony on their face when they race, some people look like they're dead. Like, sure, but you don't really know the extent to which they're feeling the repercussions of a race. So when Kayla mentioned that, I was like, yeah, that is very true. Because even if I would have gone faster, it might not have yielded anything more. If I screamed any louder, it might not have yielded anything more. But so that reassurance was definitely good. But I mean, at the race as a whole, like you said, the atmosphere was crazy. Like it was loud in there. It was fiery. There was so much energy. The
Yep.
playlist was good. We were having a good time. So it was an awesome race experience. And like even though we weren't competing directly, like having a little friendly battle never hurts. Like I was keeping my eye on Joe too because I heard the bike engine rev up
And
and
you're
I
like,
looked over and I was like,
oh,
oh, he's coming.
oh.
So it's good to have those friendly battles, even if they're not direct competition.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This all, at the end of the day, is just wrapped up into a nice bow called perspective. And when I was debriefing with Ricardo on his podcast after the race, he asked me a question of like, I just want to get inside the mind of a champion of like, how in the world do you grind through those specific moments? How do you overcome these feelings of like, I got nothing left? And I straight up told him like, the reason why I was able to show up today and still compete is because I chose to make that decision at Worlds. When I woke up at World Championships and I thought I was going to vomit like an hour before my race and wasn't sure if I could actually compete, like because I decided to just go to the warm up area, start moving my body, get dialed into what I know how to do, all I had to do in that moment was take the first step. And if things didn't work out, then I had the choice to at least pull the plug, but I wasn't going to make the decision early before I actually had a chance to try. And because I made those decisions and because I became the world champion and all these things, right? Like it just built this book of proof. And I was able to pull on that. I've been here before. I know what this feels like and I know that I'm going to survive. Will it be the outcome that I was hoping for? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not going to sell myself short, but I know that I can take the first step and make it through this race. So it's just, again, going back to the training, like we train to build confidence. We train to put these moments into our book of proof so that when we're in the middle of the race, we're getting ready to start the race, you have, well, all the proof that you need that you in fact can do this, because there is nothing screaming at you louder than your own doubts of like, oh my God, am I ready? And if you haven't put in the work mentally to really go into each training session of, what do I want to gain from this? What did I learn from this? How can I be better the next time that I show up? You're doing it wrong, in my perspective.
Without a doubt. And I think that a big thing with that is leaning into that trust and knowing that 90% of our training sessions are significantly harder than what a
And
race
much
will
harder.
produce. Whether that's volume, whether that's intensity, whether that's time domain, like our training sessions are supposed to be longer, more difficult, more taxing, more fatiguing than a race, so that when you do get on that start line, even if your body isn't feeling 100%, you know that you can produce a strong outcome. Of course, that will vary and it might not translate to the time you want. It may not translate to a PR on some days. It may not translate to your best race of the season, but your effort can still be there knowing you put in the work day to day and you stack those bricks and you go in with that like boost of confidence that, like you said, it's like all you have to do is take the first step and your body's just going to take over.
Yep.
Your mind will snap right back into it. Your body knows exactly what to do because you've done it day after day, time after time, session after session. You're doing these things. So it's not anything wildly new. And you just have to trust that you'll be able to dig deep when you need to and be able to continue pushing through the discomfort and when the race does start to get super tough. I also do think that the weekends at Underdog really do callous us to race multiple times, which for some is not an advantage, but for others, it is a huge advantage. Like for us and for some of the other Underdog athletes or some of the other athletes that you will see at like DEKA Worlds that will race 4, 5, 6 times throughout the weekend, that requires some type of tolerance to that
Yep.
because the stimulus of a race and to get your central nervous system calm enough to need to fire again that aggressively and put yourself into such a deep hole where your body is working overtime, your mind is telling you that you shouldn't do any of these things, so you're battling physically, mentally, emotionally. The more you race, the better off you are when you do get into those circumstances, which is another like notch in the belt of confidence. If you were going into this weekend and you have never raced multiple times in a weekend, the Ruck Strong would be horribly intimidating.
Yes.
And most people would be like, all right, I don't feel great. I'm just not going to do it. But you've had those experiences before. I've had those experiences before. You get on the start line, you feel like garbage and everything in your being is telling you that you shouldn't do this because you don't feel good, you don't feel like your legs are going to move, you don't feel like your body's going to be able to produce the outcome that you want, and then you go and do it and you shock yourself. Like using this weekend as an example, on Sunday I woke up, felt horrible. Joe and I ran 13 miles and then went to the DEKA Strong. And right before the ruck, I like put the ruck on my back for the first time and was like, my hamstrings are going to burst if I do a lunge right now.
Yep. Same.
Got into the race, started moving after the row, was just kind of in that like flow state a little bit, produced a really good outcome, came out with a PR. Was it the times we were looking for? Not necessarily, but the fitness carried. My body knew what to do. My mind knew what to do. I didn't overthink it. I just went for it and it worked out to the best it could have on that day. So there are so many ways to boost that confidence. And I think that both training and then getting into these race situations, the like more often can truly help when you do get on the start line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only thing that we haven't mentioned, although we've kind of preluded it to before, is just the power of we. The
Yeah.
power of us not only doing the race together, but um just the power in, like, I remember so many times before world championships, we were like in the few final weeks leading up to it, and you and I were both having like mental breakdowns or those little like terrifying moments in our head of like, are we going to be able to do this? Can we actually pull this off and like accomplish what we want to? And we were just constantly in each other's ears, like giving each other support. So yes, there is a lot of this that you have to take accountability and ownership for your own mental space, emotional space, physical space, but you never also have to do that all by yourself either. Like you can take the accountability and still be vulnerable enough to say to like, "Hey, AJ, I need help. I'm really struggling today. Can we just hop on the phone for a few minutes?" And we would hop on the phone for like an hour and just talk about life and all the things. So I think it just really goes to share that like the power of we is so much better than just the power of doing everything by yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of leads me to my definition of strong.
Yes,
You
yes, AJ,
you
tell
kind
us
of
about your version of strong. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, so you kind of just touched on that a little bit without knowing. So I think strong is a three-headed monster. I think that there is physical strength, mental strength, and emotional strength. And I think those definitely intertwine and they do intermingle and they assist each other and pull on each other in certain ways. But I do think that they all require a little bit of their own development. Part of the emotional strength, which you just mentioned, was being able to ask for help. So, to be emotionally strong, you need to be adaptable. You need to have optimism after setbacks, and you need to be able to be vulnerable and reach out and ask for help. Because, like you said, it's nearly impossible to do it by yourself. Whether you want to believe it or not, or if you've had experiences that you have overcome things by yourself, that's incredible, but you will have a significantly easier time or get a lot more out of those hardships when you do lean on other people to help you and pull you out of those situations. Some of the biggest takeaways that I have from life, from racing, from pretty much anything is when I have reached out to my friends, Kevin, Kayla, Joe, Jess, Kelly, and have just picked their brains when my brain is not helping me. And the advice and the feedback and the help that I've received has helped me become more emotionally strong. Um, on the mental strength side of things, being able to deal with adversity and hardship and negativity, those are definitely areas that you have to build up some type of a tolerance for. So, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, facing adversity head on when a challenge presents itself, and also not letting negativity, both internal and external, kind of shake your world too much, and being able to work through that and process through that. And then of course physical strength is just what we do every day, pretty much getting into the gym, making sure I'm strong and fit and healthy. I mean, of course that's serving its purpose right now in terms of racing, but at the end of the day, health is wealth. So looking long term, I mean, I just turned 25, so I don't have a lot of experience to speak from, but thinking long term, like I want to be the fit grandpa. I want to
Yeah,
be
you
the one
do.
that can run around with my grandkids and play sports when I'm old and shouldn't be moving. And even prior to that, we have some athletes in the underdog podium chasers that are in the older age groups
Yep.
that are absolutely crushing it. And those are the people that I look up to equally with the elite athletes, in my personal opinion. Like, of course, going fast and being super strong and being the top of the sport is commendable and amazing and yeah, super cool. And I admire those people. But I also admire like the athletes that we have in our camp that are in the 50 plus age groups that go out there and just ball out. Like it's incredible to see and so incredible to watch and extremely inspiring. And like, I want to be able to do that at 50, 55, 60. Like Kayla judged Steve over the weekend. Steve is
70
in the
plus.
70 plus age group and he throws down. And that is so cool
So
to me.
cool.
So The physical strength, of course, it does translate directly into the now and into the present with wanting to be a high level athlete and trying to compete and contend. But looking at it more long term, like health, just health and longevity. So strong is definitely a three-headed monster. You have to put in the work in all three areas. So I personally believe that the amount of time and effort that you dedicate to your physical strength, you should also be dedicating to your mental and emotional strength. There are so many different avenues that you can do that, and it deserves equal time. Because, like you've spoken about on some of your episodes, and I know that you've had these conversations with like your athletes and even within the team group chat, like if you don't have the mental and emotional strength, it's hard for your physical strength to carry you for everything, because going into race settings and going into competition settings is mentally and emotionally draining. So you need to have those strengths also built to allow your physical strength to prosper.
Yep, absolutely. I You couldn't have said it any better. That was amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the listeners with?
Um, so what's been really resonating with me recently is something I heard from another athlete. So I will shout out Philly Bowden. She is a marathoner from the UK. Um, I've been like watching her YouTube videos and her YouTube blogs and everything, kind of following along with her journey because she's just super cool. And at the end of every single one of her videos, she says, "Love the grind." So from that, I started like a just a little broadcast channel on Instagram called Grateful for the Grind. So similar message, similar like thought process there is you have to love what you do. So whether that's doing fitness for health, doing fitness for sport, not doing fitness at all and pursuing other endeavors or hobbies or pastimes, like just love what you do and be willing to work for it. So be grateful for the grind, love the grind, and just keep taking positive steps forward, and it'll lead you to exactly where you need to be.
Mm, so good. I love that. Well, it's been, as I expected, nothing less of a amazing conversation. And I'm just, again, so blessed to have you in life. You're such a wonderful human being. And thank you so much for just coming on the podcast, sharing this space with me. And I'm sure the listeners will be wanting to have you back at some point. So we'll probably see you on here again soon.
I would love to come back anytime you'd have me. Thank you so much for this. This was awesome.